Today we're going to look at the SL system. I've done a fresh install of the newer firmware, and I want to set up the camera fresh with the profiles and settings that I use. By default we have profiles here, and I want to set up the camera how I want it with different profile for the different situations I'm shooting in. I will make a base profile, what is all my customization that I use to make the other profiles, but that is my default setting. I don't like the default setting that is on now. I cannot find it so useful. It is only useful when you have other problems and you need to go back, and you can always set the default setting from Leica. At this point, we make a base profile, then I have a profile I use on set, and then a profile I use in studio photography with flash, and a couple of other ones for video. I'm gonna go through the menu and tell you what I'm doing. So my main drive mode is a single shot, and I use that a lot like that, but at times I use bracketing, so I will just set up the bracketing now to 5 shots, and basically that's it. Multi-shot, 2-second self-timer is good to get rid of motion, and motion artifact, it's good, but we're going back to now single shot focusing. Intelligence focusing switches automatically between continuous and single focus AF. So I prefer, and I think the camera performs best in single AF. Autofocus mode, I use a field. Focus assist is basically having an outline in red for manual focus, and we can keep it that way, it's not always on. Autofocus settings is what kind of profile of focus you're using. I stick with this unless I'm going to something specific where people are walking towards me, and there would be something like that runner, and you see the sensitivity changing, but most of the time this is like a default standard setting, and that is good for me. Tracking pre-focus, that I turn off. I hate when it keeps doing that all the time. I don't like the standard manual focus. It's I prefer when I use manual focus that the lens only goes a certain degree. I usually work between 120 and 90. Let's put 120, that's a quick turn. For cinema, you can do more like a 270, 360, but I found that these lenses are not that good in that function, because your focusing points, if you just bump it and turn it, focusing points just switches, and it doesn't keep the focusing marks. So this is what I use in manual focus when I just do video handhold it. Exposure metering, I leave it on this. This stays the same. ISO. So auto ISO, there is auto ISO settings here. Let's look at this. Shutter speed with flash. This I definitely don't want that way. I don't want anything blur. If I flash, I want something fairly sharp. I can always override it other ways if I wanted to. Shutter speed limit, that's fine. That's good. Okay, so I will leave it like that. Let's see in the next screen. Floating ISO is when you have a variable aperture zoom. The camera will automatically increase the ISO setting when you zoom in and the f-stop changes. So that is a good function to have. This I keep the same. I typically shoot DNG and RAW. The reason is because memory is cheap, and when I edit, I use those JPEGs as a preview because they're combined into one image, and the preview will be so much quicker and I get edit done so much faster. I don't have to rely on rendering so much the DNG. So that's why I use both. And JPEG settings, I keep standard profiles. Sometimes I do it on neutral, but for the most of it is standard. Reduction noise is okay, and this I will customize in some cases, but let's leave it on auto for now. It doesn't affect the raw file. Obviously it's in a JPEG setting, and sometimes it's easier to preview what you're getting out of the histogram when you recover a little bit the highlight and the shadows with dynamic range improvements there. Auto review. This is a cool setting on this camera, and I have it always on shutter press. That means if I take a picture and I keep holding the shutter button, it is comes up the image and holds it until I hold the shutter button, and it holds it in here or on the screen. So when I do portraits in the studio, the first couple of shots I check it in the viewfinder as I'm shooting, so that I see that everything is firing, exposure is okay, and all is like I wanted, without showing too much everybody that I'm reviewing pictures. So I will do that in the EVF. And sometimes even on like an event photography, I take it on and keep it on to check if the exposure is firing correctly. Long exposure reduction is okay. Doesn't make a difference for me. It's only for JPEGs. Shutter type hybrid, it's pretty much always on unless I'm shooting on set. On set for me means that I'm shooting on a movie set or a TV set where I have to be quiet and I'm not allowed to use a shutter. And we're going into e-shutter. Flash settings. I typically have a compensation on it, at least a third. I like the flash not to be just a fill. In many cases, the rooms are darker. I like it to get a little bit of a punch. So that's my setting. Live view, in this case we keep it the same. Live view, enhanced view is only used for when it's a really dark scene and you can see the scene or you have a hard time focusing, then you turn it on. But I recommend not to use it the rest of the time, and I would use it only when I shoot an event where everybody's wearing black and I can't see what's going on, if it's focusing correctly or not. Sensor stays 35 full frame, that's normal. Is normal. A new feature is perspective control. Basically, it does what the new feature in the M camera is, where it basically corrects the falling lines from the perspective to straighten out the picture. It will do only the JPEG. It will do meta tags in the DNG, so you can use it in Lightroom. There is only a Lightroom function to it, and I don't care really. So this, I'll keep it normal. The storage, I do shoot 2 cards. Usually I have 256 cards, and I shoot in one and then to the other one. In some cases, I shoot with 2 cameras more often, and so I will have some backup photos in any case, but I'm not too worried. I didn't have a camera failure or a card failure at this point, so I recommend using good cards and stay away from those that have reputation of failing or are not authentic cards. Customize control. All right, let's take a look. Joystick, FM button. Here you can customize what kind of menu showed up when you customize this button, and you decide that this will be activate one of these other functions. I keep it the same. I don't use it that much. I usually toggles in between levels, but I don't need to customize it in my opinion. Edit favorites is a submenu that you can have in the menu from the screen. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, there is one that it's called a star, and these are the favorites. So if you want to star something, you just click on it and activate it. I tend to activate only stuff that is basically not present in the first screen. So if you go quickly back, this is my first screen, and then you go into this customization. So whatever is in the first screen, it's already there for me. It's already like one quick step to customize. So I won't do that, and we go back here, edit favorites, and let's see what we need. Sometime I do this. Exposure metering, no. Compensation, ISO, gray card. I do use the gray card function sometime in the studio. And when I shoot with the flash on the camera, I just want to get a clean color to start with. Resolution film styles, I use that, and I use that sometime too. Image stabilization, we can do that. Shutter, yes. And user profile, EVF, format card, it's already there. Dial lock, so these are the two dials here, and I think it's already in the menu, but I like the joystick lock, and I like to edit the lens profiles. So if we go back to that menu that I was telling you, here we find now a star menu with all the options, and it folds like that. So let's go back to customizing it. Wheel assignment, I keep it normal the way it is, and I only have a few things I would change on a specific profile, but this is being the base profile, it stays the same. Image overlay, this is a function where when you have a layout, you take a picture, you can overlay it on another picture, so it's nothing we need to customize right now. Dial lock, joystick lock. So the reason why I wanted to joystick lock activated is when I have the camera on the shoulder, my focus point keep moving, and there is not an option to choose just a field in the middle, what would be useful. So I would do the joystick lock, and sometime I have a lock on the dial in the menu. So that's in there as a shortcut. Display settings, this stays the same. I found the color okay, I don't need to customize anything. Leica Photos app, this is if you want to pair it with your phone, and we're gonna do it at the end when we're done, so it's fairly simple though. Stabilization is on. Panning mode, I usually keep it in normal, especially for the base profile. For my cards, camera settings, these are the profiles that it shows. These are the screens that it shows the infos in. And if we go back to this, it basically info 1, info 2, info 3, and back. So that's what it's referring to. I like the way it is already, so the one I use most is this one, so we'll keep it that way. In camera setting, Touch AF. I use Touch AF quite a bit. when I do video or when I have the camera set to manual mode. I have the camera on the tripod. I just tip where it's focusing, and with a manual lens, with a autofocus lens, it will focus in that point. Most of the time I have it off. It means if you're looking in the viewfinder, you can choose a field by putting your thumb on the screen and trying to focus on it. I don't like the focusing lamp most of the time, so I will turn it off here. And now we come to this part. I prefer to have a lot of batteries than having the camera turn off on me all the time. So I will put that on 5 minutes, and that goes on 1 minute is fine. It's just turning off the display. So USB charging is on. That's good. And basically, if you have a battery pack, you can charge the battery through the USB. If you're shooting on the computer tethered, you use the USB from the computer to charge. It does a little trickle charge when the camera is on. Because the signal is fine. Lens profile, we don't want to change it. It's already automatically selected. It's more interesting when you use cinema lenses, third-party lenses, M lenses. They're not coded, and you have an adapter that is doesn't have any coding. So that's would be the interesting part in it. EV increase, it's fine. 1/3 is good. You can switch it to a half, but 1/3 is good for me. I never use USB-C mode as a must storage, so this would be always my choice. I shoot a lot into the computer, and you put USB-C cable into the computer and capture one, and you're ready to go. Meter is good. Now the date we're gonna figure out later. Naming, it's fine. This is fine. I rename all my files in Capture, either when I'm importing in the computer or when I'm shooting tethered. I set up in Capture One a name already, and it will rename the file. When I import it, I use Photo Mechanics, and it will import the RAW file and the JPEG and name it the same way, and they stay combined to speed up the process. Very useful to edit quickly. Okay, camera setting, we're good. Camera info, that is important just to see if you have an update that you want to do for a lens or a camera, but more important is copyright. We want it always on. Artist. All right, we're going, and you can see now that the camera is touchscreen, but the menus are not always touchscreen. But in this case, you can write your name, and that's good. See, now it's not touchscreen, so you have to use the joystick and remove the info. And we're going back to writing the name, because my organization is basically my name. And in this field, I will add an email address as well. Or actually, I usually do this. Okay, this is incorrect. Dot. Okay, good. See, the touchscreen is not always best solution. At this point, the only thing to do before saving the profile is to customize your buttons. So at this point, we have looked at the menu, but there is still a few things to consider. There are customizable buttons in the front and the back, and these are important too. So we go push it, and I like to use the new feature where you can switch focusing points and toggle between of them. So let me see where that would be. Toggle. They make me look for it. Okay, this is toggle focusing points, and that would be good. So if I go here and I do in portrait, let's say I have it here, and I can now switch between the two of them for a center and like a face over here from a group shot, or over here for something else. So that's one option that I like. This option is usually ISO, and I keep it that way. There is one option here to change it to the screen, the eye detect, and I keep it that way for the base. I'm not changing anything. Okay, I think we're good. So let me go to profiles. And at this point, we don't have anything assigned. So manage, save to profile, and we save it to number 1. That's it. And then we rename it because number 1 is not very useful for me. And I call it base. Okay. And now we can, so I will call the other ones the same. So let me rename this, and I call it Studio. I call this on set. Okay, then we have this for event. We have these reserved to video, so we call it cinema 4K. And this is just 4K. Oops. .30p. Okay, so we just saved the names, but really the only one that we saved is the first one. So let's go back and change some settings. So what are we gonna do? This is for studio, and all the settings keep the same. I usually do studio for portrait photography, so I would use eye or face detect for the focusing. The rest is good. Single shot, single AF. ISO, I will put it at 100. Auto ISO is fine. White balance, I will usually use it on something else. Let's leave it on flash, and you can always use the gray card. You can always change it to that. At this point, Studio means I'm connected through Capture One with a cable. I don't need the JPEGs. I'm already generating something, and we have here is mechanical shutter. This doesn't matter. Here there is a function. So if I shoot in manual mode, what would be this option? The exposure is going to get really dark and I want to turn it off so I can see what I'm framing. So I turn off the preview, I don't need the exposure because I'm going to be shooting with modeling lights. That means that the light is really low and the flash is really what is lighting my frame. Let's see if there is anything else I need to consider. Okay, let's go back to the first screen because I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use this, for example. And let's say I have it on to start on f11, and this we can have it on 160. Okay, so that looks good for this purpose, and we're gonna save it as the studio profile. See, these are named but not saved. And we call it studio. So what happens now is that, as you can tell, I'm in studio shot. You see how I change profiles already, switching to everything right here already too. And all the settings, all the buttons, where it saves, what it saves, all is in there. So I will start with the next one that is a new profile that is going to be on set. So on-set photography for me would be, so I'm starting off from the base one again. So it would be on-set photography with higher ISO is not what I want, but I will often do this in manual, and this all the way open most of the time. We're already lacking in light. I keep it that way. I would do field, yes, single, but we need to change the shutter to electronic. We don't want to make any noise. So in some cases I can use the shutter, so I will, because bending is always an issue, and the artificial lighting monitor screens, they go really crazy, and a lot of new technology of capture, they're shooting against the screen, or there is a whole wall that is a screen. They do lots of bending, and there is never a shutter speed that you can use that is comfortable. So this is my settings for that. So let's go back. I would change the white balance. Usually I'm going to tungsten. A lot of places are daylight, but maybe I should just keep it on Kelvin. Okay, so we're gonna save this profile for on-set. And my next one would be going back to base, and this would be event photography. So that is often with a flash. So I would go to like 800 ISO or 1600 maybe. I will go in manual mode. I will go this in 125. And this, I want a little bit of depth of field. So that would be my setting. If I need, I change it. But single AF yes, that's good. Field. Sometime I go face detection depending on what my situation. But once I'm in the profile, I can always change a few things. But I know what I want in this case, and I will most likely have a flash on the camera for some of this. So the flash settings, I put it on +1/3. The live view settings, I keep it this way. Just in case I turn off the flash and want to do just an ambient light. When you turn on a flash, that is a Leica dedicated flash, this switches automatically to PAS, so it overrides this settings in any case, so I can leave it this way. And I think there is nothing else I want to change. So let's save this and manage, save, and go on event. Yes. All right, so now we have a totally different, we have all our photo-based options, and we're going to change it to video. And video is a completely different menu. So if you go even here, you see you don't have the star menu anymore. You have the color of the bar switches from positive to negative, and you have all new settings. So I use, for most of the time when I do video, in manual mode, and I pre-focus and then I try to follow. So I pre-focus by using the joystick in manual mode, and focus assist, that's good. Manual focus 180, I guess that is good for now. Exposure metering, yes. Compensation, no. And I usually shoot in a different settings, so it would be either 400 or 800 because it's a log. I haven't done a straight video in a long time, so I keep, let's say, my setting at 400, and then from here I can go switch. Auto ISO setting, that is okay. White balance, I like to set my white balance so it doesn't switch around on me. All right, this is an important setting. So we're doing cinema 4K, so we have to shoot in MOV to get log profiles. So we're doing cinema 4K, what is a little bigger, then the frame is a little wider, a little more squished. So that's, and I'm going to my regular 30p in highest bit rate 422 right here to SD card. And that is it. Now in video settings. So when you upgrade the camera, a lot of time it resets everything, and when it resets the LUT profiles too, and we want to load our own LUT profile. So we shoot in log, and then we go in setting and load a LUT profile and a custom one. We can put it in 1. So this would be one that goes into the monitor, one that goes into EVF and LCD here. So most of the time I have this. I have my own LUT settings on a card, and we'll load it now, and that will be saved there. So, and you see these are the available profiles, and I'm doing this. And that's my personal, something that I've created in DaVinci from a log file, and it's a little flatter, less contrasty. I find that the LUTs from Leica have a little bit of a color shift, a little bit like a film look to it, and I'm trying to get a little more neutral and then apply a correction later if I want to get a style to my video, but I want to start with something flat and clean. The reason why I load the LUT is to preview the exposure and colors better in the EVF. I do a lot of capture through the EVF for the LUT. And time code, I have a free run and segmented videos. It's something I do sometime. Most of the time it's very useful if you're doing an event and you lose, because of some technical problem, you lose only like the last few seconds, and it just creates a new video every minute. I think it's good to have. You definitely want the record frame line. Okay, so these are the video settings. This is all grayed out now because we are in log, and log is my preferred way. We're not changing this. So we like this, and we want it not in the center because I don't want it in the center, but this is my waveform, and you can resize it now or make it smaller and have it somewhere there parked, and that's good. All right, let's go back in the menu. Customize control. There is a quality issue with audio, and there is some delay. So if you don't need the audio, you should just turn it off. If you're recording to an Atomos, you probably should keep it on. And let's see. And here we can assign what is more interesting for video. So focusing modes, this is all focus assist, I like. ISO white balance, gray card, I go back to gray card, yes. Image stabilization, yes. Video format, I have it in the other one. I recommend turning these on just in case you want to shoot like streaming, live streaming, that you don't want to edit anything. Then you can do ADR for lifting up the shadows just a little bit. Segmented video, we can turn it on. Dialogue choices and profile. Okay. There are some settings here where in video, let's go in. You have magnification here, and then you have ISO, but I rather have shutter speed when I'm in manual mode. I don't want to change the ISO because the ISO, I have a special ISO button on it. So that's what I'm doing in this one. And in AF lenses, it's kind of the same thing. I don't want to have that. I use shutter speed just to control it. Most of the time, you have shutter speed the same, or double the frame rate. But in some stuff, you want it a little sharper, and it doesn't matter if it's a little jagged. So you would go in slow motion, or then you can use a higher frame rate. But so this is a new function here where you can increase the ISO instead of a stop in smaller increments. HDMI out, okay, user profile, dial lock, display, okay, all this is fine. Yes, that's all good. For video, you do want often like an external battery that turns on and charges the camera and the battery. So that's always good to have. All right, everything else is fine. I have the two buttons in the front. The bottom one I will long press now to customize it. And I have this set to a LUT selection. So I can turn off the LUT preview if I want to see just a log or something else. Let's say if I create a LUT that is only for black and white, I can load a black and white LUT and then just preview that. And the button, the top front button, I long press now, and that I use for the waveform activation. Waveform monitor. Okay, so when I click on it, I can turn it on and off, and LUT, I can turn on and off LUTs there. Another thing I will do is hold this on top, and I will do audio. The last one. Okay, so when I push it, I get, control over my microphone, and you can switch headphones too. But I mean, you have this menu here too, but it's good to have it in that case. And this one here stays my ISO, and you see, I cannot go any lower because I'm in log, so it starts at 400. 800 is very good, recommended. 400 is the base ISO on log. So what we're gonna do now is all this save into profile. And call it Cinema 4K. So we have one left that is 4K 30, and for me that is basically, if I go here, it would be 4K 30p, but I do the 150 megabits 422, and it's a little less taxing on the camera. So I will now save the profile on this one. And we are done. What I do now is export the profile to an SD card, and that's it. And we are all set up. So we can shoot video and photos quickly by switching from one to the other one, and it will memorize where we were last. And I have a second camera, so I will load those settings on the other camera as soon as I put the new firmware in. All right, thanks for listening. Bye.